charity called Forget Me Not.
Yeah.
And I take my hat off to you. Like, I just think it's amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So Forget Me Not Australia is a charity that we started in 2005 by opening an orphanage for 6 little girls in Nepal. And through a young traveller friend, went travelling and visited a few orphanages and thought it was just hell and thought maybe we could do this better. So he came back to Australia with this seed of an idea and kind of pitched it to Kate, who was a newly emerged lawyer at the time, and his sister. They went through law together. And they wrote a constitution, made some community inquiries. Would anyone be interested in supporting this idea of a orphanage, starting an orphanage for girls who are particularly hard done by in a country like Nepal? Daughters are less valued than sons. And what with one thing and another, we had some community engagement and I came on board then. I knew the young traveller and was very much wrapped up in my community there in Hervey Bay, actually.
Yeah.
A bit further north, and we opened an orphanage a year and a half later after some fundraising for 6 tiny little girls between 4 and 6 years old. And over the years, that number grew from 4 to 6, 8, 10, 14, 18, 20. Finally had 20 little girls in an orphanage in Kathmandu that we were caring for with child sponsorship kind of model, doing all the right things, providing the best we could for them with committed sponsors.
Yeah.
And it was all running very, very smoothly. And then we were approached to fund this orphanage in Uganda for 39 starving children, and a lady who'd been helping them had been to World Food Bank and various other big charities saying, help, these children are starving, and no one would. So we put it out to our donors and sponsors to say, we're not going to detract from our Nepal works, but if you're keen or interested, can you help us support these children? So a lot of people threw their hat in the ring, jumped on board, and we sent a little tranche of money over there to get them going, a lot of communication. And then about 3 months, Kate and I decided we'd go to Uganda to just check out what's going on, help them get better established so we could help them better, because we can't just pour money in without them having, you know, an organisation in place that could
sort of
account for the money, structure, that the children were in school, all the right things were happening. Plus, of course, we're trustees for other people's money. You know, in charity, you give me money with the hope that I can deliver on what you say. So we went there, and then we had another volunteer come with us, and she stayed on board. The children were doing better. They were better fed. But when we got there, they were really hungry. It was like, 39 little starving faces, big eyes, pot bellies, scantily clad, and, like their tummies like watermelons. Like, boom, boom. And I thought, that's my turning point, really. Even though I was very committed to our Nepal project, at that point I thought, what am I doing? I looked at the sky and I thought, here I am, these kids are looking at me like I'm going to save them. I either get in deep and work it out, or I don't.
Yeah.
And I made that decision at that time that I'm going to do everything that I can to get these children fed, alive, and moving into their lives. And we left our volunteer there, and she put a forensic audit through their books, and then started picking away at the accounts and things. And man, opened a can of worms.
Yeah,
it was all false. The children had all been trafficked. They were moved from their families for the purpose of luring charities or individuals to fund them. Just a business model with children as the commodity.
You sent me a link, and I was blown away by that. I guess we're probably a little bit naive. I guess like Australia's an incredible country, opportunities, and like if someone approached me and said, "Hey, I'm helping these kids out. Show me some pictures. Like if you give us a couple $100, we can do this, do that."
Yep.
Like I wouldn't think to ask or dig deeper.
No, because who's not in love with the idea of sponsoring an orphan, supporting an orphan? It's like an altruistic thing. We were all kids once. We know what that could feel like to not have enough food or a parent or what have you.
So they so the whole, it's not just kids in these countries, like everybody's in a bad way. So you correct me if I'm wrong. So you've got adults trafficking these kids to try and get money from
well-meaning people.
Yeah, well-meaning people, charities, governments, all these types of things, that then take it for themselves, and the kids are still in the same situation.
Leaving the kids in the same, because that's the shop front. You don't want to sponsor a kid who's got, no pot belly and neat and dressed and looks like they've got it all. You're going to choose the kid that's in a more decrepit kind of condition.
Yeah.
So children are often used, well, in the majority of the cases, used as that front for the business model of child sponsorship. And it's not just in Uganda for us where we fell prey. It's, across the global south. It's through, Eastern European countries. It's everywhere. That child sponsorship model where children are kept in a residential orphanage condition is really not where it's happening.
Yeah.
The research shows us that 80 to 85% of kids in orphanages or children's homes aren't orphans, but they've got one or both parents alive who could care for their child if they were supported themselves. They're there as a purpose of profit.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, eh?
So the kids are just labelled as orphans for that transaction.
Yeah, watching that video, and we'll put a link to that video in the podcast so people can have a look. But it's an incredible, I guess, mission that you have. I take my hat off to you. I think it's just absolutely amazing. And like, I'm not sure if it was in that video or something you were saying with me, but like you've been able to rehome people that, like, girls and that thought they had no mum and dad.
Correct. So those 39 kids, Kate came back as the lawyer. We had that orphanage shut down. We rescued the children, for want of a better word, worked with social workers and mentors and other organisations to find all of their families. It took some time to retrace their families and then work out how best to support that child at home. Now, of those children, of those 39 Ugandan children, there's still 12 under our care. Going through, we've got an engineer and we've got a builder, we've got a mechanic, we've got a fashion designer, we've got 2 young midwives, and several of the littlest ones are still in that finishing grade 11 and 12 at school. So they're doing very well. And our donors, if we told the truth of what had happened, that first 30,000 did feed some of them, but, a lot of it was squandered. They stuck with us and said, go get them. So we thought you've picked the wrong organisation to deal with, because we expect transparency, we expect openness, and we're all learning. So if there's some incident or something, tell us and let's grow together. So once we came back from Uganda, we put that spotlight deeply on our Nepal project that had been thriving for 8 years, completely thriving for 8 years with donors. Our young founder won Queenslander of the Year runner-up, and we'd won accolades and all sorts of things for doing what we were doing. But then we discovered further through deep consultation with the children who were no longer 4 and 5, but 10, 11 and 12, that we went there, and one little girl particularly looked at me and said, Auntie, please, I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go to my mother and father. I need to go home. So she revealed her truth to us. And, when you've cupped a child's face for 8 years and you love them, they're on your Christmas tree, you've sold their image to your family, friends and community for sponsorship. It was time to tell these children's truth for them. So we did. And so after we again rescued them from the organisation we were partnered with to have the orphanage running, we removed them. And
so was a similar thing happening in Nepal?
Same thing was happening, unbeknownst to us. They all had birth and death certificates for parents.
Oh,
they were all legitimate paper orphans. On paper, they were orphans, but not in reality.
So how do you trace that? Like, where do you even start?
So we partnered then with an organisation that are experts in family tracing. So our 20 little girls, 20 now women of 26 and 27, our 20 little girls all went home after 2 years of tracing needle in a haystack. So they helped us put together their backgrounds. We have reintegration officers who trek day and night across the foothills. You've been to Nepal, through mountains, wild landscapes, landslides, what have you, trekking for day and night, searching for family, looking for traditional clothing that the children have described, dialects. Was there trucks and buses outside your door, or was it just mountains and valleys? And put those children's backgrounds back together and then return those children home, and now support those children at home so they don't need to be institutionalised, which research also shows us is extremely harmful for long-term well-being for children. That started our whole organisational change. We now work across Nepal, India and Uganda doing similar work. We work particularly in Nepal as our flagship model with the government to change childcare and the way children are cared for in vulnerable situations in Nepal. You can no longer open an orphanage in Nepal as a result of some of our work, and you can't enter a child into an orphanage that does exist already because they're closing down. The downward spiral is happening. The government asks us to take groups of children into our transit home and return them when they find a decrepit orphanage. Our goal is no orphanages in Nepal by 2030. Where are we up to? We're on the way, Duayne. We're on the way, and
you've had a lot of success.
We've had some incredible success because you know, we believed in children. We believed what they said, and you know, there was nothing for me more satisfying than knowing that when we knocked on a door, there's a family that thinks their child's dead and gone because they've lost contact. The child's name's been changed. They're illiterate. They can't trace. They don't have money to go to the city consistently to find their child. When we come knocking and seeing a father drop to his knees that we've found your little boy, and having that child go home, you know, there's days I sit at that desk and I just weep because it's good news. It's all good news.
I was definitely, Camille and I were weeping watching your video. It blew me away. But you don't know what's going on.
You don't know. And people talk about, we should be doing things in our own community or working where we have. But you know what? We're all global citizens at some point. Yeah. And we have incredible welfare structures here in this beautiful country of ours. And it's beyond our shores that sometimes can use some of our well-being into their lives. And I know myself, I sponsored one of those little girls in our orphanage in Nepal from all the way through. She's now a 26-year-old social worker and she's a powerhouse. She's amazing. It's because I invested in that child and knew that her family could do a better job raising her than my staff in an orphanage. Yeah,
it's very different situations, isn't it? Like I'm the same. Like I think, why don't we help our own backyard? But I keep coming back to, like, we're in Australia. Like, we have so much opportunity. Mm-hmm. Everyone gets to go to school. And like, really, I know there's kids out there that are brought up in terrible situations and home life. But everyone gets to an age where you have to make a decision.
Sure. Yeah.
And a lot of these kids in third world countries, like, they don't get to make decisions. And their families don't, because like you said, they're uneducated. They can't read and write. They just sort of, I don't know.
They're faced with an incredible thing. Like, someone comes through, a child trafficker will come through a village and say, if you give me a little bit of your cash, like sell a cow or sell the last bit of your land and your child, I'll take them to this home where they'll be educated by foreigners. So
the parents are trying to do the right thing.
They're trying to do the right thing. They want a better hope for their child, so they relinquish their child with a little bit of cash and the child and send them off with the traffickers. Sometimes 2 or 3 children from a village will go, and we might end up bringing 1 or 2 home. Sometimes all of them come home eventually, but they hope for the best. So they don't sell their children. They pay for their child to go and get a better education, and they're tricked. They sign a document they can't read with the press of a thumb as their signature, and their child slips into the orphanage business. And
then so the traffickers get a fee for each child?
Yeah, they get maybe about 1,500 AUD is the common kind of figure. Slip them into there with a false document, and that child is untraceable by family, at least. Yeah.
That's unbelievable. Look, I take my hat off for what you're doing. I think it's absolutely amazing. We'll drop some links if anyone wants to jump on board and sponsor you or find out more.
We're tax deductible.
Look, I think it's a really, really valuable cause, and look, you never know. We're talking about some stuff. Hopefully, we can do a lot more with you in the future when it comes to that type of thing. But